I got fired, walked out with a year's pay, and watched my boss get canned right after me. And the best part? They never saw it coming. Let me take you back to the early 2010s when YouTube was still this wild, untamed beast and companies were scrambling to figure it out. I landed a gig as a content creator for some university trying to boost their brand. The pay was garbage, $200 a month, but back then, jobs like this were rare. I figured I'd grind it out, build my portfolio, and move on. Then, on my second day, my manager, let's call her Linda, drops the bomb. Your KPI is 85 videos in a year. I blinked. 85? She smiled, all teeth, like she was handing me a gift. 3 to 10 minutes each. Script to final edit. You'll handle everything. Everything. That meant writing, shooting, editing, even composing music because they were too cheap to spring for royalty-free tracks. Oh, and their equipment? Ancient. I had to use my own laptop just to render anything above 480p without it crashing. I tried to tell her it was impossible. One person? 85 videos? In 2012? That was studio-level output with a shoestring budget and a single pair of hands. Linda just patted my shoulder. Just focus on quality. If the videos are good, we can be flexible on the numbers. I should have known then. The first month was fine. Linda was all sunshine, praising my work, telling me I was exactly what they needed. Then she found out I smoked. It was stupid. I took a break outside, came back in, and suddenly her nose was wrinkled like I'd walked in covered in sewage. A coworker pulled me aside later. Dude, you just signed your own termination papers. Linda hates smokers. She's gotten 2 guys fired already. From then on, every little thing was a problem. 5 minutes late? Lecture. Not answering my phone during lunch? Disrespectful. The smell of smoke on my clothes? Unprofessional. Never mind that I was pulling 60-hour weeks, editing until my eyes blurred just to keep up. 5 months in, the hammer dropped. Linda marched me into the director's office looking like a kid who'd just caught the cookie thief. The director, some stern woman in a blazer, folded her hands. We're disappointed. You're not meeting your KPIs. I stared. I've done 30 videos. That's more than 1 a week. The target was 85. With a full team, maybe? Not solo. Linda cut in, smug. We'll just hire a professional production house to finish the work. That's when it clicked. See, part of my job was keeping a list of production contacts, vendors we could outsource to if needed. Linda didn't know the first thing about video production. She'd have to use my list. So, on my last day, I updated the contacts. Swapped numbers, messed up emails. Except one. A buddy of mine worked at a mid-tier production house. Junior director, hungry for a break. I called him. You want to land the biggest contract of your career? He listened. I laid out the whole play, how to pitch, what to say, even the exact style the university liked. All he had to do was play the part. And in exchange, his company would pay me a 15% finder's fee. 2 days later, they were in that office, charming the hell out of Linda and the director. You get us, the director gushed. Of course they did. I'd handed them the script. They signed the contract. And that's when the real cost hit. Professional video production? Back then? A single 3-minute video could run you $5,000 easy. Multiply that by the 50 they still needed. 4 months later, my buddy's company had cranked out the rest. And my cut? 15% of a 6-figure deal. I was on a beach in Bali when I got the call. Linda got fired. Turns out the project's budget was only supposed to be about 1.5 years of my salary. They'd blown past it 10 times over. Linda had panicked, approved every invoice without sign-off, desperate to prove she could finish what I failed to do. The chancellor lost it. So yeah, I got fired. Then I got paid. And Linda? She got exactly what she deserved. The moment I hung up that call in Bali, I swear the ocean looked bluer, the drinks tasted sweeter, and the weight of the last 5 months just evaporated. But let me rewind a little because the real satisfaction wasn't just in the money or the revenge. It was in the details. See, after I got fired, I wasn't just sitting around waiting for karma to do its thing. I was orchestrating it. That production house my buddy worked for? They weren't some fly-by-night operation. They were legit, good enough to make corporate clients happy, but not so big that they'd turn down a shady deal if the money was right. And my buddy? Let's call him Mark. Mark was sharp. Ambitious. The kind of guy who knew how to play the game but wasn't yet ruthless enough to screw over a friend. When I first pitched him the idea, he hesitated. Dude, if they find out we rigged this. I laughed. Find out what? That you gave them exactly what they asked for? That you delivered high-quality videos on time? Where's the crime? He thought about it. Then grinned. The beauty of the plan was in its simplicity. The university wanted to believe a professional team could magically fix everything. So we let them. Mark's company came in with a polished pitch deck, sample reels that just happened to match the university's aesthetic, and a production timeline that made Linda salivate. "We can deliver the remaining 50 videos in 4 months, Mark said, smooth as hell. The director, let's call her Dr. Whitmore, nodded like she'd just discovered the Holy Grail. "This is exactly what we need." Linda, of course, was practically vibrating with smugness. "She shot me this look like, see? This is how real professionals work." I just smiled. What they didn't ask, what they refused to ask, was the cost. Because here's the thing about outsourcing creative work, it's expensive. You're not just paying for the final product. You're paying for the director, the DP, the editor, the sound guy, the colorist, the assistants, the equipment rentals, the location fees. Every little piece adds up. And when you're dealing with a client who doesn't know how any of it works, you can name your price. Mark's company charged them $8,000 per video. 50 videos. Do the math. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Mark's team handled everything, following the exact style and tone I'd already established. They even reused some of my unused scripts to save time. And because I'd set it all up, my 15% cut landed me just shy of $60,000. For getting fired. But the real kicker? Linda had been so desperate to prove she was right, so obsessed with showing Dr. Whitmore that she could fix the mess I supposedly created, that she'd approved every single invoice without getting proper sign-off. By the time the finance department noticed the hemorrhage of cash, it was too late. The project had burned through 10 times its original budget. The chancellor, some old-school academic who probably still thought YouTube was a passing fad, hit the roof. And Linda? Gone. No golden parachute. No graceful exit. Just a security escort out of the building and a LinkedIn profile that quietly switched to open to work. Meanwhile, I was sipping mojitos in Bali, $60,000 richer, with a fat recommendation letter from Mark's company in my back pocket. Karma's a bitch. But sometimes, she's beautiful. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Sweet revenge, a fat paycheck, and a tropical vacation to celebrate. But life's never that clean. About 3 weeks after I got back from Bali, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Hello, is this the video guy?" A woman's voice, sharp but trying too hard to sound casual. I froze. I knew that tone. HR people always sound like that right before they ruin your day. "Depends who's asking," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's Janet from the university's finance department. We need to talk about some irregularities with the production invoices." My stomach dropped, but I forced a laugh. "Janet, I haven't worked there in months. You should be calling the production company." "That's the problem," she said, and I could practically hear her grinding her teeth through the phone. "The contracts were approved under your department's budget code." Now my blood ran cold. See, here's something I hadn't told Mark back when I was still employed. Linda had made me set up all the vendor paperwork. And like an idiot, I'd put my name as the secondary approver on everything just to make the accounting department happy. A formality, I'd thought. Until now. I paced my apartment, my bare feet sticking to the cheap laminate flooring. The AC unit wheezed like it was about to die, just like my freedom might if they decided to come after me legally. But then Janet dropped the bomb. "We can't find Linda." "What do you mean, can't find her?" "She stopped responding to emails 2 weeks ago. Her apartment's empty. The director says she took personal leave, but payroll says she never filed the paperwork." A slow grin spread across my face. Linda hadn't just been fired, she'd fled. Probably when she realized how badly she'd screwed up. Janet kept talking about audits and repayment plans, but I was already opening my laptop. A quick search showed Linda's LinkedIn was still active, but now listed her as traveling consultant with no current employer. "Janet," I interrupted, "let me save you some time. Check the approval timestamps on those invoices." I was already terminated when they were signed. Silence. Then the sound of frantic keyboard clicks. "Oh," she said finally. "Oh my." Turns out Linda had backdated my access permissions after I was gone. A fireable offense on its own, not to mention legally questionable. I hung up with Janet feeling lighter. The university wouldn't pursue me, they'd be too busy covering their own asses. But as I sat there in my dim apartment, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting off the half-empty beer bottle on my desk, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't over. Because if there's one thing I know about people like Linda, it's that they don't disappear quietly. And sure enough, 2 days later, Mark called me sounding like he'd just seen a ghost. "Dude," he said, voice hushed. "You need to check your email." I opened the message he'd forwarded. It was from an anonymous account, just one line. "I know what you did. Attached was a screenshot of a text conversation between me and Mark from months ago, the one where I'd first pitched the whole scheme. Someone had been watching, and they wanted me to know it. The email stared back at me like a live grenade. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, sweat beading at my temples. That screenshot shouldn't exist. Mark and I had only ever talked about this in person or through encrypted apps, or so I thought. I called Mark back, my voice tight. Where the hell did this come from? No idea, he hissed. It was sent to our general inquiries inbox. No signature, no demands, just that. I paced my apartment, my mind racing. The only people who knew the full story were me, Mark, and his GM, and none of us would be stupid enough to leave a paper trail. Unless. A memory flashed. Linda leaning over my shoulder one afternoon, her floral perfume choking me as she checked my progress. My stomach twisted. Had she installed something on my computer? Keylogger? Remote access? I grabbed my laptop and did what any panicked ex-employee would do. I Googled how to check for spyware at 3 a.m. While scans ran, I dissected that screenshot. The angle was weird, not a direct forward from a phone, but a photo of a screen. Like someone had snapped a pic of Mark's phone while he wasn't looking. Then it hit me. The office. Mark's production company had an open floor plan. Anyone could have walked by his desk, seen my messages pop up, and taken a photo. But who would I? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Check your balcony. Every hair on my arm stood up. I lived on the 4th floor. Creeping to the sliding glass door, I peeled back the curtain just enough to see. At first, nothing. Then movement, a shadow detaching itself from the railing. A figure in a dark hoodie, face obscured, holding something small and rectangular. A phone? A camera? They raised a hand, not waving, but counting. 1 finger. 2. 3. Then they dropped something over the railing. I yanked the door open in time to hear a metallic clink from the alley below. By the time I sprinted downstairs, all I found was a dented USB drive taped to a business card. Linda's business card. Back upstairs, I plugged the drive into an old burner laptop because I wasn't that stupid. One folder appeared, labeled 85. Inside, 85 video files, each named after a university building. The first one played static for 3 seconds before cutting to security camera footage, my old office, timestamped from my last day. There I was, wiping my computer while humming off-key. Then Linda entered, her back to the camera as she placed a coffee cup on my desk. The footage skipped. Now it showed me leaving for HR, Linda immediately snatching up the cup, which hadn't held coffee at all, but a thumb drive. She plugged it into my computer, clicked for exactly 37 seconds, then pocketed it with a smile that made my blood freeze. The video ended with white text on black. You owe me 85. I nearly laughed. This wasn't a threat, it was a resume. Linda wasn't coming after me for revenge. She wanted in. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Linda, my Linda, the anti-smoking corporate drone who couldn't tell a DSLR from a toaster, had played me. Worse, she'd recorded herself doing it. The USB drive wasn't a threat. It was an audition tape. I called Mark, my voice hoarse. We've got a problem. When I described the footage, he let out a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. She copied your files? How much proprietary shit did you have on that computer? Nothing damning, I lied. The truth? I'd cut corners. Used pirated plugins. Maybe borrowed some stock footage. Nothing unusual for underpaid creatives, but definitely the kind of thing that could void contracts if the university found out. Mark's silence was deafening. Finally, he sighed. She's not going to the university with this. How do you know? Because she sent it to you, he said. If she wanted to burn us, she'd have gone straight to legal. This is a shakedown. I played the last frame again. You owe me 85. Not a demand for money. Not a threat. A pitch. Linda knew exactly how we'd scammed the system. And now she wanted her cut. We met at a diner off the interstate, the kind of place with sticky vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like motor oil. Linda arrived 10 minutes late, dressed not in her usual stiff blazer but in a sleek black turtleneck that made her look like a Bond villain's tech consultant. She slid into the booth and dropped a folder between us. 32. I didn't touch it. What's that? Proof you stole licensed music for 17 videos. She tapped the folder. The rest is your little side projects, all shot on university time with their equipment. My jaw clenched. I used my gear. After the first month. She smiled, sipping her coffee. Receipts don't lie. Across the table, Mark tensed. What do you want? Linda leaned in. The production house you hired? Their bid was 8 times higher than market rate. Her nails, painted blood red now, not corporate nude, drummed the table. I want in on the next one. I barked a laugh. You blackmail us and expect a job? No. Her eyes gleamed. I expect a partnership. She pulled out a flash drive identical to the one left on my balcony. On it, a list of 6 local businesses, each with upcoming video budgets larger than the university's. These clients don't check invoices, she said. They just want results. Mark and I exchanged glances. This was insane. Reckless. But as I stared at Linda's smirk, I realized something terrifying. She'd been the villain in my story. Yeah? She might just be the hero of hers. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed like a trapped fly. Linda's manicured finger tapped the flash drive rhythmically, click, 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 each sound ratcheting the tension tighter. Mark broke first. You're out of your damn mind if you think we're cutting you in. Linda didn't blink. She just slid a second folder across the table. Inside were screenshots of Mark's company's internal server logs, dates, times, IP addresses. Proof they'd inflated hours on not just the university job, but 3 others. My stomach dropped. How the hell did you get these? IT guys love complaining about their bosses. She shrugged. Especially after a few drinks. This wasn't just blackmail. It was a grenade with the pin already pulled. I studied Linda's face, the sharp edge of her smirk, the way her pupils dilated slightly when she talked numbers. This wasn't the same woman who'd lectured me about smelling like smoke. That Linda had been a drone playing by corporate rules. This Linda? She was hungry. I leaned forward. Let's say we play along. How does this work? Mark kicked me under the table, but I ignored him. Linda's smile widened. She laid out her terms. She'd handle client acquisition. Turns out she had contacts at every mid-sized business in the state. Mark's company would adjust their bids accordingly. I'd oversee creative to keep quality high. Profits split 3 ways. The kicker? She'd already set up an LLC. For tax purposes, she said, like we were discussing office supplies instead of fraud. Mark exhaled sharply. We'd need airtight paperwork. Fake invoices. Shell vendors. Linda pulled out a 3rd folder. Drafted and ready. That's when I realized the terrifying truth. Linda hadn't snapped after firing me. She'd been planning this for years. 2 weeks later, we landed our first Mark, a chain of luxury car dealerships. The pitch meeting was surreal. Linda played the polished account manager, Mark the earnest creative director, me the scrappy production whiz. The client ate it up. Back in the parking lot, Linda high-fived us like we just won the Super Bowl. See? This is how you run a business. Mark waited until she left to grab my arm. We're in bed with a shark. I watched Linda's taillights disappear. No, I muttered. Sharks only bite. She collects. That night, I dug into her past. LinkedIn showed a steady climb up corporate ladders, but no job lasted more than 18 months. Public records revealed 2 dissolved LLCs. And a deep dive into her alma mater's alumni forum turned up an old thread. Avoid Linda C. took credit for my entire capstone project. The date? 2007. This wasn't her first scam. Just her biggest. The dealership job went smoother than any of us expected. Linda had somehow gotten us a $120,000 budget for a series of 6 promotional videos, triple what a local operation like ours should command. When I asked how, she just smirked and said, some clients pay for the idea of quality, not quality itself. The production was a joke. We shot generic B-roll of cars gliding down coastal highways, actually the same half-mile stretch near Mark's cousin's house, used stock footage for 30% of the runtime and had an AI voiceover instead of hiring talent. The whole thing cost maybe $25,000 to produce. The client loved it. When the payment hit our LLC account, $94,500 after Linda's consulting fees, we celebrated at a dive bar near the docks. Linda ordered top-shelf tequila despite the bartender's warning that they didn't really carry that. This, she announced, slamming back the shot, is why corporate America deserves to be bled dry. Mark looked queasy. I felt it too, that mix of exhilaration and dread, like we'd just shoved a shopping cart full of stolen TVs past a sleeping security guard. We developed a system. Linda would identify targets, businesses with fat budgets and clueless marketing directors. We would create impossibly detailed creative decks full of buzzwords, synergistic brand verticals. Mark would provide just enough legitimate production value to avoid lawsuits. Our cut grew with each job. $28,000 from a real estate firm for virtual tours, Google Earth footage plus drone shots. $62,000 from a tech startup for documentary-style interviews shot in Mark's garage. $175,000 from a hospital network for training videos, 90% recycled content. The money was stupid. The rush was worse. It happened during job number 5, a tourism board contract in Santa Barbara. I was editing footage of wine tastings stolen from a stock site when Linda burst into my apartment holding 2 bottles of champagne and a manila envelope. "Pack your bags," she said, tossing the envelope on my desk. Inside were first-class tickets to Bali for all 3 of us. Payment cleared early. That's when I noticed the logo on the envelope. Not the tourism boards. A bank. Not just any bank, the regional chain we'd been planning to pitch next month. "You already closed them?" I asked. Linda popped the champagne. "Better. They paid up front." The cork hit my ceiling. My stomach hit the floor. No client pays 100% up front. Not unless they're desperate. Or stupid. Or non-existent. The champagne tasted like battery acid. I set my glass down so hard it cracked the table. "Linda, what did you do?" She rolled her eyes, flopping onto my couch. "Relax. It's just creative financing." Mark arrived 10 minutes later, still sweaty from a shoot. When Linda showed him the tickets and the bank envelope, he turned the color of spoiled milk. "That's First Coastal Bank's logo," he whispered. "We haven't even pitched them yet." Linda sighed like we were being deliberately dense. "No, you haven't." "I have." She pulled out her phone and showed us a wire transfer receipt $218,000 from FCB Media Solutions deposited that morning. My fingers went numb. That's not a real division. I did their competitor research last month. Exactly. Linda's grin was all teeth. Their marketing VP is a trust fund idiot who thinks accounts payable is an HR problem. I told him we'd done work for their Media Solutions group last quarter and he just approved the invoice. Mark made a noise like a deflating balloon. "That's not a con. That's fraud. Only if they notice." Linda tossed him a ticket. Hence Bali while the paperwork processes. 2 days later, sipping my ties on a private beach, I finally asked the question that had been burning since day one. "Why us?" Linda adjusted her sunglasses. "Because Mark has a legit business to launder through. And you." She smirked. "You're the only one who ever outplayed me." The admission should have flattered me. Instead, ice water trickled down my spine. It happened at the resort's business center. Mark was supposed to be back in LA handling client communications, aka stalling the tourism board's feedback. But when I went to print boarding passes for our return flight, I found an open email thread on the shared computer. From Mark to First Coastal Bank Accounting. Subject, invoice discrepancy. Per our call, attached are the correct W-9 forms for Media Solutions vendor A. I stopped reading. The idiot was apologizing his way into a confession. I ran to find Linda, but she was already gone, just a half-packed suitcase and a note that said "never split the difference" in her perfect cursive. The wire transfers reversed the next morning. The champagne bubbles went flat as the reality of Mark's blunder sank in. I stared at the abandoned suitcase in Linda's villa, her designer swimsuit still draped over a chair like a shedskin. The resort phone rang, front desk asking about the 3rd guest's early checkout. I hung up without answering. Mark found me on the beach at sunset, his flip-flops kicking up sand as he jogged toward me. "Dude, we need to." I threw his laptop at him. The screen cracked when it hit his chest. "You emailed the bank? Are you actually brain dead?" He scrambled to catch the computer, his face twisting. "They were going to notice eventually." I was trying to. "Save your own ass," I finished. The waves crashed louder as the tide came in. "Where's Linda?" Mark's silence told me everything. We tore through her villa like cops on a raid. No note. No clues. Just a single burner phone left charging on the nightstand. When I pressed the power button, it displayed one safe contact. Plan B. The phone buzzed in my hand with an incoming call from a blocked number. I answered. Linda's voice came through crisp and calm like she was ordering coffee. "The Bali police will be at your villas in 17 minutes. There's a speedboat at the private dock, key under the life jacket." Mark was already shoving clothes into a backpack. "What about you?" A pause. Then laughter, bright and utterly terrifying. "Oh, sweetheart. I was never on the manifest." The line went dead. We ran. The boat was there, just like she'd said. As the engine roared to life, I watched red police lights crest the hill above the resort. Mark kept babbling about extradition treaties while I checked the boat's GPS. One destination pre-programmed. 48 HR crews, no customs. The screen flickered. Then a new message popped up. P.S. Next time, bring better partners. Mark vomited over the side as we hit open water. I gripped the wheel and didn't look back. Somewhere out there, Linda was already 3 steps ahead. And for the first time, I understood we'd never been her partners. We were her alibi. The vodka burned my throat as I slumped onto the cheap IKEA couch, the apartment's AC unit humming like a dying insect. Mark paced the tiny living room, his footsteps wearing a path into the thin carpet. You think she set us up from the beginning? He asked for the 12th time. I didn't answer. The truth was worse, Linda hadn't set us up. She'd used us. Every step, every job, every inflated invoice. We weren't partners. We were disposable. The burner phone buzzed on the coffee table. A single text from an unknown number. Check the safe. Mark nearly tripped over himself getting to the bedroom closet. The cheap wall safe behind a faded hotel painting clicked open with the code 085, our first job's payout amount. Inside sat 2 envelopes. Mine contained a Canadian passport with my face but someone else's name, a stack of crisp hundreds, and a first-class ticket to Vancouver leaving that night. Mark's held a single sticky note. You should have checked the server logs deeper. His face went gray. He collapsed onto the bed, the note fluttering from his fingers. She kept backups. Of everything. The real invoices, the emails, His voice cracked. The footage of me doctoring time sheets. I stared at my ticket. One way. No return. The phone buzzed again. Boarding pass is digital. Car arrives in 20. Burn everything. Mark grabbed my arm. You can't just. I shook him off. You saw the same footage I did. She was always 3 moves ahead. The words tasted like ash. You really think this is the part where we win? The car came exactly on time. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched Mark through the rear window, still standing in the apartment doorway, clutching that damning note, looking every bit the abandoned pawn he was. Somewhere out there, Linda was already starting her next game with better players. And me? I was just glad to still be a piece on the board. The plane's engines roared to life. Below us, Singapore glittered like scattered diamonds. I ordered a whiskey and tried not to wonder which sparkle might be her, watching my escape. The attendant handed me my drink with a smile. Compliments of the woman in 2B. My blood turned to ice. But when I turned, the seat was empty, just a single playing card left on the leather, the Queen of Hearts. The game wasn't over. It never would be. The whiskey trembled in my hand as I stared at that playing card. The Queen's eyes seemed to follow me, her smile too knowing, too much like hers. I flipped it over, nothing. No message. No taunt. Just the faintest trace of lipstick on the edge, the same shade Linda always wore. The plane lurched into the sky and my stomach dropped. Not from turbulence. From realization. She wasn't just watching. She was here. Rain sheeted down as I stepped out of the airport, the Canadian winter air biting through my jacket. The passport worked flawlessly. No alarms. No raised eyebrows. Just a bored customs agent and a stamp. The Uber dropped me at a nondescript downtown apartment building. The key was under the mat, just like the text said. Inside, the place was sterile, a furnished box with no personality. The fridge held vodka and takeout menus. The bedroom had a single change of clothes, my size. And on the nightstand, another burner phone. It rang the second I touched it. I answered. You made it. Linda's voice was smooth, amused. Took you long enough? I clenched the phone. Where are you? Close. A pause. You did well, you know. For an amateur. The condescension burned. Amateur? You ran. Left us to take the fall. She laughed, low and throaty. I left you an out. That's more than most get. I wanted to scream. To throw the phone against the wall. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion crashing over me. What do you want, Linda? Same thing I've always wanted. Her tone shifted just a fraction. A partner who's smart enough to keep up. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then at the apartment around me. The rain rattled against the windows. This wasn't an escape. It was an audition. The next morning, a courier delivered a slim black envelope. Inside, a keycard for a downtown co-working space, an address, and a time. 8 p.m. Don't be late. I went. The office was all glass and steel, empty except for a single conference table. And there, leaning against it like she owned the place because she probably did, was Linda. She wore black, head to toe, her hair shorter than I remembered. No corporate blazer. No fake smile. Just a predator's calm. You took the money, she said. The passport. The out. She tilted her head. That means you're in. I didn't move. In what? She pushed a folder across the table. Inside, blueprints. Security schedules. A list of names. A real job, she said. One where the payout doesn't require splitting 3 ways. I flipped through the pages. A high-security data vault. A Fortune 500 company. A 9-figure score. My throat went dry. You're insane. Probably. She smiled. But you're here. I looked at the plans. At the exit. At her. Then I sat down. The game wasn't over. It was just getting interesting. The warehouse lights buzzed like angry hornets, flickering just enough to make shadows crawl across the concrete floor. Linda's fingers traced routes on the blueprints, service tunnels, security blind spots, air ducts just big enough for a desperate man to squeeze through. The hacker, Mouse, he'd said, like that was a real name, tapped a key on his laptop. The screen lit up with rotating 3D schematics of the data vault. Thermal scans show 2 guards on rotation. They switch every 47 minutes, not 60. That gives us a 13-minute window they don't account for. The muscle, a woman named Rios, cracked her knuckles. And when they notice? Linda smiled. By then, we're ghosts. Grandpa, who I'd learned was actually a retired safecracker named Elias, chuckled and patted my shoulder. Don't look so nervous, kid. First big score always feels like you're about to piss yourself. I swallowed dryly. This wasn't some inflated invoice scam. This was real. The kind of job that ended with either private islands or a bullet in the back of your skull. Linda caught my eye and held it. Still in. The blueprints blurred. I saw Mark's face in that Singapore apartment doorway. The empty Queen of Hearts on the plane. The way Linda always seemed to be 3 steps ahead. I picked up a spare tablet from the table, felt its weight in my hands. Where do we start? Mouse grinned. Rios nodded approval. Elias muttered something about dumb kids these days. And Linda? She just turned back to the plans, her lips curving in that knife-edge smile. We start by making you someone else. The warehouse door rattled as a gust of wind hit it. Somewhere outside, a train whistle screamed. I barely heard it. The game was already moving. The mat smelled like sweat and old rubber as Rios flipped me onto my back for the 10th time. My ribs screamed, but I bit down on the pain and rolled with the momentum like she'd taught me. Better, she grunted, hauling me up by my collar. Now do it without sounding like a dying seal. Across the warehouse, Linda watched from her perch on a rusted equipment crate, sipping black coffee from a paper cup. Her eyes tracked every stumble, every hesitation. She didn't offer praise, just occasional corrections delivered in that razor-sharp tone. Your shoulder dips when you're about to throw a right hook. Fix it. Mouse tossed me an earpiece after dinner. Test run tonight. You'll be shadowing Elias at the Markham building. I froze mid-bite of my cold sandwich. That's 3 blocks from the vault, yes? He grinned, fingers flying across his keyboard. We like to multitask. The earpiece buzzed to life with Elias' wheezy chuckle. Don't wait yourself, kid. Just a little window shopping. At 1:17 a.m. I trailed Elias through the Markham's lobby, my pulse hammering so loud I was sure the night guard would hear it. The old man moved with deliberate frailty, leaning heavily on his cane as he chatted up the security team about his granddaughter's art exhibit. The earpiece crackled. See the vault door behind reception? Mouse whispered. That's a Gen 3 Securico. Watch how the guard opens it. I nearly choked when the guard actually swiped his keycard. The heavy door hissed open just enough for me to catch the glint of secondary biometric scanners inside. Elias coughed, a signal. I slipped out while he accidentally spilled his thermos all over the guard's logbook. Back at the warehouse, Linda was waiting. She took one look at my shaking hands and tossed me a whiskey bottle. First rule, she said as I gulped the burning liquid. Fear keeps you sharp. But let it drive you just once and you're dead. The bottle was empty. My hands still trembled. Mouse hooped as new data flashed across his screens. Got the keycard frequency. And oh hell, Elias, you beautiful bastard, is that a palm scan? On screen, the security footage showed Elias patting the flustered guard's shoulder, his wrinkled hand lingering just a second too long on the biometric pad. Linda's smile could have cut glass. Clock's ticking, she murmured. 3 weeks until their quarterly audit. That's when we move. The whiskey soured in my stomach. 3 weeks to perfect a role I wasn't sure I could play. 3 weeks until we either disappeared rich or bled out on cold concrete. Across the room, Rios caught my eye and nodded once. Welcome to the big leagues. The next 3 weeks blurred into a grueling rhythm of preparation and paranoia. My days began with Rios drilling me in hand-to-hand combat until my muscles shook, while nights were spent hunched over schematics with Mouse, memorizing every pixel of the vault's security layout. Elias taught me the art of misdirection, how to palm a keycard mid-handshake, which cufflinks could hide lockpicks, how to mimic the unconscious body language of someone who belonged. You're not stealing, he corrected one night as I practiced walking like an entitled executive. You're collecting what's owed. Makes all the difference in the head. Linda was always watching. She'd appear silently in doorways, observing my progress with those unreadable eyes. Sometimes she'd correct my posture with a sharp nudge between the shoulder blades. Other times she'd toss me into impromptu tests, convincing a hotel clerk I was management, talking my way past a bouncer, pickpocketing a mark in a crowded bar without getting caught. The night before the job, we gathered in the warehouse for final prep. Mouse handed out earpieces so tiny they looked like hearing aids. Rios distributed custom-tailored suits with hidden pockets for tools. Elias produced a set of flawless ID badges he'd been crafting for weeks. Linda stood before a projected image of our target, the vault's final security door. Tomorrow at 3:17 p.m., the building's fire system gets its quarterly test. That's our window. Mouse will loop the cameras for exactly 8 minutes. Elias handles the final lock. Rios manages extraction. She turned to me. You're the face. The VP of Internal Audit here for a surprise inspection. She stepped closer, adjusting my tie with fingers that lingered just a second too long. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. Just believable. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I found Linda on the warehouse roof, smoking a cigarette as the sun painted the city in gold. Last chance to walk away, she said without looking at me. The morning traffic hummed below us. Somewhere, a church bell tolled. I took the cigarette from her fingers, inhaled the acrid smoke, and handed it back. We're burning daylight. Her smile was all teeth. The game was on. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and paranoia. My custom Oxfords clicked against marble floors as I strode past reception, radiating the quiet arrogance of a man who owned the building. The security badge clipped to my suit, a perfect replica down to the holographic watermark, swung just visibly enough to catch the light. Mr. Carlyle, the guard said, glancing at his tablet. We didn't have you on the visitor log today. I offered a practiced, condescending smile. That's why they call it a surprise audit. Mouse's voice buzzed in my ear, fire test starting in 90 seconds. Northeast stairwell is clear. The guard hesitated just long enough for sweat to prickle between my shoulder blades. Then the fire alarm hooped to life, strobes flashing. Right on schedule. We moved like a well-oiled machine. Rios took position by the emergency exit, her earpiece feeding her real-time security chatter. Elias shuffled behind me, the picture of an elderly assistant, his cane concealing lockpicks made of non-metallic polymer. The vault door loomed ahead, its polished steel gleaming under fluorescent lights. My fingers didn't shake as I swiped the stolen keycard. The panel beeped green. Biometric scan required, the system intoned. Elias coughed, a wet, rattling sound. As the guard leaned in to assist the poor old man, his hand brushed the scanner. The light flickered from red to green. The vault door hissed open. Inside, rows of safety deposit boxes lined the walls. But we weren't here for those. Mouse's intel had been precise. The real prize was the server rack and back, where the company kept their off-the-books transaction records. Linda's voice crackled in my ear, 6 minutes remaining. I plugged Mouse's device into the server. Progress bars flashed as terabytes of data siphoned away. Somewhere in that encrypted trove were bank codes, shell company trails, enough dirt to extort half the Fortune 500. The fire alarm cut off abruptly. Too early. Shit. Mouse's keyboard clattered. They're running manual checks. Security's coming up the east elevator. Rios' voice was calm. Change of plans. We go now. Elias was already moving, his frail act gone, eyes sharp. I yanked the device free, 75% complete. Good enough. We hit the stairwell as the elevator dinged. Rios took point, her hand resting near the concealed pistol at her back. 3 flights down, the exit door burst open. 2 guards. Time slowed. Rios moved like lightning, a palm strike to the first guard's throat, a sweeping kick to the second's knees. They dropped without a shot fired. We spilled into the alley where a nondescript van idled. Linda sat in the driver's seat, engine running. As we peeled away, she tossed me a burner phone. One message blinked on screen. First payment, $12.8M. Mouse hooped. Elias lit a cigar. Rios kept watch out the tinted windows. And Linda? She met my eyes in the rearview mirror, her smirk telling me everything I needed to know. This wasn't the end. It was just the first move. The van smelled of cigar smoke and adrenaline. Elias exhaled a satisfied cloud as he counted stacks of cash from a duffel bag, his gnarled fingers moving with surprising dexterity. Mouse was already hacking into offshore accounts, his face lit by the glow of 3 laptops balanced on his knees. Rios caught my eye in the rearview mirror. First time seeing real money? I stared at the numbers flashing across Mouse's screens, $12.8 million, split 5 ways. More than I'd ever dreamed of stealing. More than Linda had promised. Linda took a sharp turn into an underground parking garage, the van's tires squealing against concrete. Money's meaningless unless you know how to disappear with it. She killed the engine and turned in her seat, fixing me with that knife blade gaze. You did good today. But this is where most crews fuck up. A black SUV idled in the shadows. 2 new faces waited beside it, a woman with a sleek blonde bob and a man built like a linebacker. Meet your extraction team, Linda said. Mouse snapped his laptop shut. Wait, what? Linda tossed him a set of keys. You're going to Buenos Aires. Elias, you're on a cargo ship to Jakarta. Rios, Moscow. The air left the van. This wasn't a celebration. It was a dispersal. Rios's hand drifted toward her weapon. We had a deal. And you'll get every penny. Linda's voice stayed calm, but her fingers flexed near the steering wheel. But we all knew this was a one-time sell. The heat comes down, we scatter. That's how survival works. The blonde woman stepped forward with a briefcase. Phones, wallets, anything that can ping a tower. You'll get clean ones at your destinations. Elias chuckled and stubbed out his cigar. Should have seen this coming. She always was a cold one. He patted my shoulder as he climbed out. Watch your back, kid. Mouse looked like he might protest, but one glance from the linebacker changed his mind. Within minutes, the van was empty except for Linda and me. The engine roared back to life. We drove in silence through twisting alleys, the city lights bleeding into streaks through tinted windows. Finally, Linda spoke. You're different. I watched a police cruiser speed past in the opposite direction. How? You didn't ask where you're going. The truth was, I'd known from the moment I took that cigarette on the roof. There was only one way this ended. The SUV turned onto a private airstrip where a sleek jet waited, engines humming. Linda cut the ignition and handed me a passport. Not Canadian this time. Swiss. Last chance to walk away, she said again. I flipped open the passport. My new name stared back at me, Alexander Reinhardt. Businessman. Philanthropist. Ghost. The jet's stairs lowered with a hydraulic hiss. I didn't look back as I climbed aboard. Some games only end one way. With the house always winning. The flight attendant appeared with a glass of single malt, 18-year Macallan. Neat, just how I liked it. No note. No explanation. I swirled the amber liquid, watching it cling to the crystal. She was still watching. Zurich unfolded beneath the wings as we descended, orderly, precise, a city built on secrets. The private terminal was empty except for a driver holding a sign, Herr Reinhardt. The car glided through spotless streets to a nondescript building near the Bahnhofstrasse. The vault room smelled of cold steel and old money. Safe number 8724 opened to a key code I hadn't been given. 07-19-20-23. The date of the university job. Inside lay two things. A black ledger with coordinates, account numbers, and aliases, her network. A single key stamped with Hotel de Bergs, Suite 411. The concierge didn't blink when I arrived unannounced. The suite door swung open to reveal Linda at a grand piano, playing Debussy's Reverie with her back to me. You took 37 minutes longer than I estimated, she said, fingers never breaking rhythm. I dropped the ledger on the piano. This is a trap. The music stopped. She turned, eyes gleaming like a cat's in firelight. No. It's a test. She flipped open the ledger to a marked page, a $50 million wire transfer from a Dubai shell company. The CEO of Vortex Dynamics lands here tomorrow. He travels with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. I exhaled sharply. You want me to rob him alone? Linda's smile was a scalpel. I want to see if you're worth the trouble. Outside, Lake Zurich glittered under midday sun. Somewhere a church bell tolled 12 times. I picked up the dossier beside the ledger. The game wasn't over. It was just mine now. The ice in my scotch clinked as I raised a hand for another round. The bartender, a sharp-eyed woman with a coiled intensity, met my gaze a beat too long. Linda's warning flashed through my mind, asterisk, assume every variable is compromised. Asterisk. Across the room, Velt laughed too loud at some sycophant's joke, his free hand groping the blonde beside him. The briefcase sat heavy on the table, its polished surface reflecting the bar lights like a challenge. I waited until the bodyguard's watch alarm buzzed, 3 p.m., right on schedule for his stairwell smoke break. As he disappeared through the service door, I signaled the bartender. Send the gentleman's table a bottle of the 1945 Croisette Cuvée Leone. Her eyebrow twitched. At 25,000 euros a bottle, it was the kind of order that got attention. Velt's piggish eyes lit up when the cognac arrived. He beckoned me over with a sweaty hand. You must be from the Zurich office. I offered my best boardroom smile. Alexander Reinhardt. Just paying respects to the man who revolutionized neural encryption. His ego swallowed the lie whole. 2 hours and 3 glasses later, he was slurring stories about his yacht in Monaco. The blonde had long since escaped. That case must hold the crown jewels, I joked, nudging the briefcase with my shoe. Velt's laugh turned nervous. Better. The new quantum, he caught himself, patting the case like a child. Let's just say the competition would kill for this. The bartender appeared with a dessert cart. Complimentary canellas, sir. As Velt lunged for the pastries, I accidentally knocked over his ice bucket. Frigid water flooded the table, soaking his sleeves. Asterisk skies. Asterisk, he jerked back, fumbling for napkins, and the briefcase lock clicked audibly as condensation hit the thermal sensor. The bartender's heel came down hard on my foot. A silent warning. Linda's voice echoed in my head. Asterisk, the play isn't over until you're on the plane. Asterisk. I stood abruptly. Let me get you a proper towel from the concierge. Velt was too drunk to notice the briefcase now sat unlocked. Too distracted by the bartender, her bartender, leaning in to help with the mess. By the time I returned with a monogrammed linen towel, the briefcase was gone. Velt was passed out. And the bartender's apron pocket bulged just slightly. The elevator doors slid shut behind me. The burner phone buzzed. Hangar 7, 20 minutes. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. The game wasn't just mine now. It was ours. The private jet's engines were already whining when I reached Hangar 7. No Linda. Just the blonde bartender, now in a sleek travel suit, tossing the briefcase to a waiting pilot. Where is she? I demanded. The blonde smirked. Gone. You didn't actually think you were the only player, did you? The burner phone vibrated in my pocket. A single message. Lesson 1. Trust no one. Especially me. The blonde boarded the jet without looking back. As the wheels retracted, I spotted the briefcase's contents spilled across a cabin seat, not schematics. Photographs. Of me. At the university. In Singapore. On Linda's warehouse roof. Every move documented like a lab experiment. The phone buzzed again, a video this time. Linda's face filled the screen, her smile glacial. Congratulations, she purred. You just stole your own leash. The footage cut to Velt, stone sober, shaking hands with the bodyguard as they boarded a separate jet. A staged mark. A manufactured score. The final shot showed Linda tucking the real briefcase into a Zurich safe deposit box. Number 8724. The screen went black. New coordinates appeared. A new game. A new move. And somewhere out there, Linda was laughing. The coordinates led to a private club in Monaco tucked behind an unmarked door in the Casino de Monte Carlo's basement. The air smelled of cigar smoke and seawater, the walls lined with framed photographs of ships that didn't exist and people who'd never been born. Linda sat at a back table dealing poker to 4 empty chairs. You took longer than I expected, she said without looking up. The cards whispered across green felt. Sit. I didn't move. You played me. Of course I did. She flipped over the river card, the Queen of Hearts. Just like you played Mark. Like he played the university. This is what we do. The bartender from Zurich emerged from the shadows holding 2 things. The real briefcase. A loaded .38. Linda finally met my eyes. Now you choose. I stared at the weapons. At the woman who'd turned my life into a chessboard. At the game that never ended. Then I reached for the briefcase. Linda's smile was a knife in the dark. Smart boy. The game wasn't over. It never would be.